What if the most powerful military in the world couldn't win? For decades, U.S. naval dominance has been the backbone of global security. But the rules of engagement are changing. The era of undisputed naval supremacy is coming to an end. In a direct clash between peer superpowers, the battlefield is no longer just land and sea. It's geography, logistics, and technology. It's a game of strategic depth. Experts suggest that invading China isn't just a logistical nightmare. In theory, it may be a strategic impossibility. The United States military is built for power projection. It is a force designed to strike anywhere on the globe. Its 11 nuclear-powered carriers allow it to dominate any ocean on the planet, projecting strength across vast distances. But China has spent the last 3 decades building a military for one primary goal. That goal is to deny that very projection of power within its own region, its own backyard. On paper, it looks like a clash of giants, a simple comparison of numbers and firepower. But in reality, the home field advantage changes the mathematics of war entirely. Strategy takes precedence over strength. The first and most imposing barrier is geography. The Pacific Ocean is thousands of miles of open, exposed water. The Pacific Ocean is the largest geographic barrier on Earth. It is a vast, empty expanse of water. For the U.S. to reach China, it must cross over 7,000 miles of open, exposed water. Every bullet, every gallon of fuel, and every soldier must be transported across this massive expanse. This creates the longest and most vulnerable supply chain in military history, a logistical tightrope. While China operates from its own industrial heartland, the U.S. must rely on a handful of forward bases. Each of these bases is a fixed point, a target in its own right, within range of regional defenses. Then there is the First Island Chain, a natural barrier that both protects and constrains the Chinese coastline. Crossing it would require the most complex and dangerous amphibious operation ever attempted in warfare. The Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea are shallow, treacherous, and highly defensible for those on the shore. Nature itself is a formidable opponent here. The geography dictates the terms of the engagement. But geography is only the beginning. China has spent decades perfecting what analysts call A2AD, anti-access and area denial. It is a philosophy of defense designed to keep an enemy at bay. This is a layered defense system designed to destroy incoming threats long before they can see the mainland. From long-range anti-ship ballistic missiles to advanced underwater sensors, the coast is essentially a fortress. Any approaching fleet would be tracked from space, monitored by drones, and targeted by batteries hidden inland. The depth of these defenses means that for the U.S. to even start an invasion, it would first have to win a war of attrition. A war of attrition that could last months, draining resources and political will on both sides. And then there is the ultimate deterrent, the shadow of nuclear escalation. Both nations are nuclear powers. Any direct invasion of the mainland carries the risk of total, irreversible escalation. Analysts suggest that once an invasion force threatens the survival of the regime, the threshold for nuclear use drops. This balance of terror ensures that even a conventional victory could lead to a global catastrophe. While geography and missiles form the physical barriers to conflict, there is a third invisible wall that is perhaps even more formidable: the global economy. In the 21st century, the United States and China are not just rivals, they are the twin pillars of a single integrated global market. China is the world's workshop. Every day, millions of tons of goods flow through its ports, bound for American shelves and factories. From consumer electronics to essential industrial components, the U.S. economy is deeply rooted in the Chinese manufacturing engine. This interdependency extends beyond basic goods. It includes the critical minerals and components that power modern life. Trillions of dollars in debt and investment tie these two giants together in a tight, inescapable embrace. This is the financial equivalent of mutually assured destruction. To attack the other's heartland is to attack one's own bank account. Military analysts suggest that the first shot of a conflict would trigger an immediate and total collapse of global trade. This is not just about a local disruption, it is about the severing of the most critical artery of the modern world. The immediate impact would be felt in every boardroom and every household on the planet. The global economy would effectively cease to function. Imagine a world where the flow of fuel, food, and finances stops instantly. That is the price of direct conflict. The social and political stability of both nations depends on this flow. Without it, the home front becomes as dangerous as the battlefield. Supply chains for everything from medical supplies to microchips would vanish overnight, plunging both nations into economic chaos. The global semiconductor industry, the lifeblood of modern technology, would be among the first casualties. Without these components, the machines of war and the infrastructure of civilian life would grind to a halt within weeks. From basic pharmaceuticals to advanced surgical tools, the disruption would be absolute and catastrophic. The dependency on critical minerals, where China holds a dominant position, would cripple Western industrial mobilization. The cost of war would not be measured in billions, but in the potential collapse of the modern way of life for billions of people. The sheer scale of economic interdependency makes a conventional military victory feel like a form of collective suicide. In this era, the most powerful weapon isn't a missile, it's the power to disconnect, and that power cuts both ways. To invade China is to destroy the very world that the United States has spent 80 years building. Beyond the physical and economic, the battlefield has expanded into the digital and orbital realms. Modern warfare may not even begin on the ground. In the opening seconds, cyber warfare would target the very nerves of society, power grids, banking systems, and communications. The goal would be total systemic paralysis, denying the enemy the ability to coordinate, to react, or even to see. A silent strike that could neutralize an army before a single soldier even reaches their staging area. Informationized warfare means that the truth itself becomes a casualty, replaced by a digital fog that masks every move. Both nations possess advanced cyber capabilities and anti-satellite weapons. In theory, the opening move of an invasion would be to blind the enemy. Disrupting the orbital infrastructure would render modern precision-guided munitions and naval navigation systems almost useless. A conflict in space would create a Kessler syndrome, a cloud of debris that could deny access to orbit for generations to come. This orbital blockade would isolate the entire planet, destroying the global communication networks we take for granted. Without the high ground of space, the technological advantage of the United States military is effectively neutralized. Disrupting communication and navigation could paralyze an invading force before they even leave their home ports. A fleet without data is a fleet in the dark, vulnerable to the very coastal defenses we analyzed in Part 1. The digital fog of war would be so thick that identifying the source of an attack might take longer than the battle itself. In this environment, certainty is the first casualty, and without certainty, an invasion is impossible. Then there is the complex web of regional alliances. A US invasion would depend on the cooperation of nations like Japan and Australia. But for these nations, the proximity to the conflict makes the stakes far higher. They are on the front lines of any retaliation. The diplomatic and political hurdles of building a coalition for such an invasion are as daunting as the military ones. Every nation in the region has its own interests to protect, and few are willing to risk everything for a war they cannot win. Logistics, geography, economics, and technology. These are not individual hurdles. They are a single, interconnected system of deterrence. China's ability to mobilize its entire industrial base for a home field defense far exceeds any expeditionary force's capacity to sustain an attack. This is strategic depth in the 21st century. It is a fortress built of both concrete and code. This is the essence of the American imperial trap. The US has built a global system that it must defend, but that very system makes direct conflict impossible. It is a trap of its own making, a dominance that depends on a stability that war would inevitably destroy. The deeper the US looks into the logistical and strategic reality, the more the victory starts to look like a catastrophe. When we combine these factors, the impossible geography, the lethal coastal fortress, the economic suicide, and the cyber paralysis, we see a defensive architecture that is designed not just to win, but to make the very idea of an invasion unthinkable. The conclusion for US planners becomes clear. It is not just a question of whether an invasion could succeed, but whether it is worth the cost. In the high-stakes game of global hegemony, the risks of escalation far outweigh any potential conventional gains. In the analytical perspective of the modern military, an invasion of the Chinese mainland is a trap with no winning move. It is a strategic stalemate that has defined the 21st century, ensuring that the peace between giants remains unbroken. A peace built not on trust, but on the cold, hard logic of strategic impossibility. Strategy is the art of achieving goals without conflict, and in this clash of giants, the greatest move is often knowing when not to fight. The true measure of a superpower is not in the wars it wins, but in the ones it is wise enough to avoid. In the end, the most powerful weapon is the wisdom to preserve the very world we seek to lead. Sometimes the most powerful move is not to fight at all.